Okay, great, everyone. We are going to get going. Hello, my name is Johan, and I'm part of the team here at Pond. I want to welcome you to today's vendor demo session with Madison, Stephanie, and Jenny from Point. Before I turn it over to the Point team, I want to remind everyone that if you're interested in learning more about this solution, we'd encourage you to send to the Point team a Pond message. You can do this by logging into your Pond account and then navigating to the Point provider page and clicking send message. From there, you can get your questions answered and request a one-on-one meeting. And as a reminder, we'll put Pond credits into your account for every meeting arranged through the platform. Without further ado, let me turn it over to Madison, Stephanie, and Jenny.
Hello, everyone. If you are hopping on during your lunch, hi, thanks for eating with us. We know that volunteer coordinators are some of the hardest working operators at nonprofits, and you're often overworked, underpaid, rarely thanked. So thanks for being on here for what's probably your break. In the chat, we'd love to know where you're from and what you're having for lunch, because we can all use some lunch inspiration. And for our West Coast friends, if you want to type in your coffee order, would love to hear that too. This week at Camp Impact is focused around tools to manage your organization's people power. I'm Stephanie, your now lunch buddy, or coffee buddy if you're on the West Coast. And I work with nonprofits here at Point. Also on this call from the Point team is Madison, Point's CEO, and Jenny, Point's nonprofit partnerships manager.
Hi.
Jenny and I are your account managers here at Point. So if you have any questions or need any help or anything like that, we will be your BFFs.
So we would love to get started, and we're going to jump right in. But you know, when you're on a date and your date only talks about themselves, well, we don't want to do that. But because we're on a webinar and we can't actually hear from you, we're going to guess about you. So here's our guessing game. We think that you might fall into one of these three personality types of volunteer coordinators that we see all over and over again. We have thousands of nonprofit admins on our platform who are 85% women. And if you're a man joining us, hello, or if you identify another way, hello. We find that volunteer coordinators, again, fall into these three buckets and these personality types. So slide number one, the hacker. You might be hacking tools together to make it work for your volunteer coordination. You might be thinking, I got to work with what I have. So you're scraping together Excel and Sign Up Genius, and you're emailing and you're calling people, and your volunteers sign out like a actual physical pen and paper, which you have to take that pen and paper and manually insert data yourself later on. If that's you, you are an amazing hacker. Like, wear that badge proudly. You should be really proud with everything that you've accomplished to make your systems work. Jess is one of our friends at Point that started off as a hacker. She managed 1,000 different volunteers using 5 different tools. And her volunteers fed 600 of the poorest families in Columbus, Ohio that were well below the poverty line. And Jess made it happen by hacking tools together. Or if you are not a hacker, you might be an upcycler. I know, stick with me. You might be using outdated, extremely clunky volunteer management system. You're like constantly tweaking things, like you're going to make it work, you're going to tweak this, and you're going to ignore the possible interface that has come straight from the early 2000s, and you're just going to deal with it. If that's you, you're amazing. Brianna was that upcycler. She used old systems, made it work. Honestly, she eventually became a hacker and hacked systems together. But if you are an upcycler, hello, mad respect. Or if you're not an upcycler and you're not a hacker, you might be a magician. Heather talked earlier at Camp Impact, and Heather worked some magic building a system. Salesforce was hers that was promised to be a volunteer management platform, but it's really a donor database. And she worked some magic making it work for volunteering. We know, and you know, that donor databases are not built for volunteering. And you have to put some magic and some big cash into making those work. So whoever you are, if you're a hacker, if you're an upcycler, or if you're a magician, hello. Tech should work for you and your nonprofit, not the other way around. So that's why we built Point. We built Point specifically for volunteer management needs. We work with nonprofits all around the country in all 50 states by listening to people like Jess, people like Brianna, and people like Heather to build a system that works for you. And again, not the other way around. The best description I can give a Point for you to visualize it is if like Eventbrite and Salesforce made a baby for volunteer management. You can go to the next slide. There is no need to hack tools together because we encompass a bunch of those tools that you might already be using to work for your volunteer management. So I hope you have a very clear picture of this child that Eventbrite and Salesforce may have made. But at Point, enough about us. What have we done for our partners? And these are real stories. Jess and Brianna and Heather are not made up. They're real people that work at real nonprofits. With Jess, our hacker friend, we've saved her about 15 hours per week on volunteer management, and we helped recruit 3x the number of volunteers that she needed during the COVID-19 crisis for her to scale and meet some of the most immediate and emergent needs in our headquartered city. Brianna at the Children's Foundation of America, we saved her about 5 hours per week using moving from an older system. And we also helped her increase her volunteer base by 65%. For Heather, that you might have met earlier this week at the Austin Diaper Bank, we saved her about 9 to 10 hours per week. And she flashes this like a crazy 98% attendance rating, which we are so happy and proud to be her partners and making sure that the people who sign up for her events actually attend. So that's enough for me. These real stories are amazing, and we can't wait to show you what Point can do.
So success stories always sound great, but it can feel a little bit nebulous if you're thinking 98% attendance rate, really? But it's true, and we want to help you get there.
If you're ready to level up your volunteer management, you won't do it alone. Hi, I'm Jenny, a nonprofits manager at Point. Part of our job is to help train you and guide you.
We will help you set up your management platform so you let Point do the automated work for you, like sending out email reminders and running reports, and you can have actual time to talk to volunteers. We'd love to help you. We can even help you set up your account step by step. And our team is here to give you tips and tricks on volunteer recruitment. We never want a volunteer to bounce from your website to different sign-up forms. So we'll help you optimize your volunteer listings and tell you what to change to give you the best results. So time to meet the tools. This is our little Point family here. We've got the admin dashboard. And this is what you guys and anyone else on your team will use to do all of your management. So post volunteer opportunities, check in volunteers, view your volunteer database, volunteer profiles, manage groups and programs, etc. In the website integration, instead of posting volunteer opportunities twice on your volunteer platform and on your website, wouldn't it be great if you could just do that once? You can. The website integration automatically pulls your volunteer opportunities from Point to your website, and volunteers can sign up from your website. Okay, let's talk about the volunteer platform. We understand that volunteers come in all shapes, sizes, and levels of tech ability. It can be very challenging to get a tool that college students find easy to use. Hint, Gen Z does not like to pick up the phone to call volunteer coordinators. And your very sweet 85-year-old volunteer that's been with your organization for years, it does not like any form of tech. Like, this person doesn't even have an email. Point makes volunteering easy for both of these groups and everyone in between. Your volunteers can access your opportunities from the web or by downloading the mobile app on Android or iOS. So let's get to the demo. I'm going to share my screen with you and walk you through all of the tools and features and how they all work together to make your job easier. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, and Jenny and Madison will walk you through. We'll answer your questions as we're going through this. Okay, welcome.
That was amazing. You went from
I practiced several times. I was a little bit worried about that quick thing. My ability to talk while switching screens. So thank you for the appreciation.
I want to call that out. That was amazing.
If you want to buy me lunch later, you can. Okay, so welcome to the Point dashboard. This is where you and anyone else on your team, that's right, you have unlimited admins on Point, can access your volunteer data and management tools. I want to start with the basics. So I'm going to spend about a minute just doing a quick menu overview, and then we'll dive into each features. So we've got our notifications here, pretty straightforward. Under organization is where all of your internal ops live. Everything that you need to, run your internal operations at Point. Your Point page is like your volunteer hub. This is awesome if you don't have a website. Programs are ways that you can manage groups of events and volunteers. For example, if you need to report hours served under food pantry, hours served under thrift store. Documents are where you and other admins on your team can add documents to add to events, programs, or even volunteer profiles. The integrations is where the website integrations live. People has contacts, which is your volunteer database, groups, and admins. The report section is where your report lives. We want you to never crunch numbers again. The volunteer stats is your main impact report, and donation stats are where you can see your donations on Point. Under volunteer, you can see manage events. This is where you can post your volunteer events, check volunteers in, etc. And then this is also where you can find volunteer activity. The give section, we're not going to dive into any giving features today on Point, but micro donations like $5 or $10 are possible on Point, so your volunteers can convert into donors faster. The support page is where you can get all of your questions answered, and settings is subscription email notifications. The networks feature is for all of our multi-site nonprofits or volunteer centers out there, and so if that's you, let's talk. Okay, now that you have the lay of the land, I want to walk you through a chronological process of how you'll use Point day to day. So we're going to start with the event section because once you get started, you'll create your volunteer opportunities. From the manage events or the calendar view, you'll hit the big orange button that says create event. This is a pretty standard event form like you'd see on Facebook, Eventbrite, SignUp Genius, etc. But with all of the information your volunteers need to know and some extra management features. You can add an event to a program, which, like I mentioned before, is a great way to separate out admin responsibilities or impact reports. You can make your volunteer opportunities public, so anyone can jump in and help out, or private to approved volunteers or certain groups. Or you can make a secret link, which can be really helpful for corporate groups and corporate partners. You can add restrictions like age restrictions or gender restrictions. Where is pretty straightforward, but I want to call out this section here. Having the opportunity to let volunteers know what they need to know about the location is a great way to help you cut down on that pre-event communication. So adding where to park or where to check in when they get there is really helpful. When, again, pretty straightforward, you can add different shifts if you have a long day or if you want to assign people to different roles or have people sign up for different roles. You can even make your event ongoing. So for example, if you have a tutoring session every Wednesday night, you can just create the series with one click. Contact information, header, photo, the cause that your event supports. About the event is a great place to remind your volunteers why the event is important or to highlight your mission. So for example, at community dinners, we serve hot meals to families whose household income is 230% of the federal poverty guidelines, etc. What will volunteers do? And then the place to remind volunteers what they need to bring or wear. Again, having all of this information in one place for the volunteers makes it super easy. You can even add documents to your event here. So if you have like a map or a parking pass or anything like that. And then you hit publish and you have your event. Woohoo! I just wanted to add a little bit of cheer, especially for my West Coast folks who it's like 9 a.m. In case you're just waking up, I wanted to give you a little woo to start your day. Once you have your event, there are several ways for you to share your event for your volunteers to see your opportunities. Number one, you can share the specific event link. And this is really helpful for recruiting volunteers. You can share this event link on Facebook or in email newsletters, and your volunteers can sign up right with the link. You can integrate Point with your website. Here's the Tortoise Conservancy's page with all of their opportunities right on their volunteer homepage, making it super easy for both new and current volunteers to find. You can share your Point page, which has all of the public events available to your volunteers here. It's like a Point version of a Facebook page for volunteers to access if you don't have a Point integrated in your website. And volunteers can also log in on their phone or their computer. This is especially helpful for those who have private volunteer opportunities. If a volunteer has joined your organization on Point, they see a private feed of your events right there. Okay, let's go back to the admin experience. Once volunteers have signed up, you will see your event roster here. Volunteers get automatic reminders to show up for your events, but you can email them here. For example, if you wanted to say, hey, this event is happening, rain or shine, please dress for the weather. You can also assign volunteers to shifts or an event, and this can be really helpful for the volunteers who don't have access to technology. On the day of the event, when volunteers show up, all you have to do is check them in, and this automatically calculates the hours for the individual volunteer, for the event, and then for your organization as a whole. And here is your report. Do you see how pretty it is and easy to access? This is nonprofits. One of nonprofits' favorite parts about Point is how easy it is to share their impact by exporting this report to PDF and sending it to their board, using for donor reports, adding to grant applications. Super easy. You've got some standard stats here like volunteers and hours, how many events were attended, economic impact. You can even see when volunteers most active and your top volunteers. This info typically helps nonprofits improve their volunteer program. For example, in the Tortoise Conservancy, they're crushing it with their middle-aged volunteers, but they could use some work on engaging the younger generation. You can toggle this report by date, group, or program. And because I know how important it is, yes, you can export your data here. That's something that people ask all the time. And yes, all of your data on Point is exportable. If you need to dive down deeper, volunteer activity is like an in-between of the event and the event stats. It is a granular view of what volunteers are doing for your org, both past and present. Now let's talk a little bit more about managing volunteer info and volunteer programs. Contacts. This is your database of volunteer information. We usually say it's the most similar to a spreadsheet. You can search and sort and filter, but unlike a spreadsheet, these profiles are dynamic and update automatically. So when you can dive down into individual volunteer profiles to see contact information, what groups and programs the volunteer is a part of, their volunteer activity. This can be really helpful for building volunteer relationships. You can even add notes and documents. For example, for Adana, I noted her emergency contact and added her background check results and signed liability waiver. You do have unlimited volunteers on Point. All of your admins can access this really easy. So again, it makes it super easy for your volunteers for your admins to see everything here.
I wanted to pop in and say, you as admins have this view, but your volunteers also have this view as well. So on their volunteer profile on Point, whether they're accessing that on the web or an app, they get a complete view of all their activity. So if you have student volunteers through Point that are bugging you crazy for their hours, it's all on Point. They can screenshot it and send it to their college they're applying for. It's a streamlined process, which is super helpful for you as an admin to be able to direct them that way. You also can just screenshot these reports if you ever wanted to and send them directly to the volunteer.
Moving along to the rest of our people, you can see all of your admins here. It's super easy to add admins and adjust permissions. As a note, each admin can set their own email notifications for your volunteer activity, like event signups, cancellations, or self-submitted hours. Now that we've talked about managing volunteer events and activity and where all your people are, let's dive into some deeper management features. Groups are typically one of the most helpful features for organizing volunteers. You might create a group if you wanted to create a private event for a group of volunteers, like background check volunteers. If you wanted to see a certain number of hours for a volunteer for a group, like board members, or kind of like a tag, like if you wanted to remember where volunteers came from, like from Hogwarts or Dunder Mifflin. Creating groups is super easy, and you can even mass sort your volunteers into groups by uploading a CSV. Programs are ways to group groups of events and volunteers. You might create a program based on location, activity, or department. The admins of the Tortoise Conservancy report hours and impact by program to apply for program-specific grants. Also, each admin can have their little home base of where their events, hours, documents, volunteers, etc. live. Volunteers can even add hours outside of events to specific programs. For example, volunteers of the Tortoise Mentoring Program use their app to report their hours after every mentoring session that they have. Documents. So like I mentioned before, this documents tab is where you store all of your documents. We talked about adding documents to a volunteer profile, adding documents to an event, like a map or a parking pass, or documents to a program, like guidelines or instructions. I want to talk a little bit about adding documents to your profile and your Point page. This is kind of like a good home base for where your volunteers can find all of their information. For example, in the Tortoise Conservancy, we have the accident waiver and release of liability form. We have the how to handle tortoise guidelines. And we have the volunteer handbook. If you have any questions or need any help, support is a great place to go. The support page has lots of tips, and you can even use the chat box over here. I don't actually know if I am where I am on your screen, so I might be pointed to Johan. If you need any help with point, ask Johan. And you can even, so you can use the chat box to hit up me, Jenny, or other people on our team. Each page also has these little orange light bulbs in the corner of each page to walk you through what everything on the page means and how it works. So that's really helpful. And it's pretty easy to learn Point, but like I said before, we are here for you. If you have any questions, we're happy to go over them. But if you think Point is a great fit, Jenny or I would love to meet you. Set up a meeting on Pond. I think our Pond profile is in the chat. But don't forget, you have money in your Pond account to spend on your Point subscription. And speaking of cash, we just launched Point Pro, and we are offering it at a lifetime discount, 50% off until August 31st for our first Pro users. So if Point is a good fit, hurry. All right. Thank you for spending your lunch with me. I will be checking out the lunch suggestions. Homemade veggie soup sounds amazing. Thank you, Kira. And I think that is everything. If there are questions in the chat, we're happy to answer them.
I think that's
Great.
it.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate you taking the time today and being part of Camp Impact.
Have fun at camp.
Bye.
Thanks all. Goodbye.